To quote Matthew McConaughey, all right, all right, all right. We are we are at episode 27, ladies and gentlemen, and what better way to end the first season of At Home with Mark but with Josh Smith. Josh, thanks for hanging out, man.
Dude, thanks for asking me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. And I know you've been doing a lot of these, so we'll try to make it we'll traverse different ground hopefully.
All right.
But so just on
You want
that
me to play
topic,
bongos without my shirt and be Matthew McConaughey today?
that would be great, and then the cops will show up.
Yeah.
But the first thing that I usually do on this little platform is, and I'm always curious about this because I have a specific moment in my life where I actually was like, I want to play guitar. Like it was a very, very specific moment. And I know you started playing very young, but do you remember something that was like the trigger that made it more real for you?
That made it more real. Man, I was really lucky. So I got my first guitar when I was 3 years old. Just kind of randomly, the day my sister was born, our birthdays are really close together. My dad brought me home this guitar, and I think I don't know, they felt like my birthday got overlooked because it was right before when my sister was born. And so, yeah, he brought me home this guitar, and I, beated it up for a couple years until I asked for lessons. And the beginning was kind of weird, like struggled to find the right teacher at first and the right books, and I couldn't quite get hooked right away. And then I remember the second teacher teaching me, a Beatles song, Michelle, My Belle. And that was it. It was like, oh, I made music now. You know what I mean? Because the first place I went tried to upsell us on a guitar and a new book right away. Like, oh, his guitar's not good enough and he needs a better this. And I felt like I didn't learn anything in the few weeks I went there. And then they found me this kid who had just graduated University of Miami Jazz School. And that became my first real teacher. And when he showed me that, it felt like, okay, now I understand. This is great. This feeling, I could play music. And yeah, that was it. I think that was the moment.
Nice. So yeah, because you grew up down there, right, in Florida?
Yeah, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale.
Was the most of your life like through like high school? Were you down there?
Oh yeah. I lived down there till I was 22 when I moved out here to Los Angeles.
Okay. So then, yeah, so you've spent the majority of your career there then, I guess now in LA.
Yeah, I've been here, since 2002. So 18 plus years.
Man, that's crazy. Was that like a scary time? Or were you just like, screw it. I'm young. I'm gonna just go out there. I'm gonna hustle. I'm gonna sleep on couches.
Yeah.
Like, what was the vibe?
It was a little of both. So up until I was 22 years old. Up until that time, I'd done nothing but play my own music, and I'd been, halfway successful and just like, I played a lot of gigs. I toured around in a van. I put out records that we paid for ourselves. I had a following, especially around the Southeast. But I toured all around the country. But yeah, I got very frustrated quick because I did that. I was doing that basically full time almost from when I was 14, but especially from when I was 17 and when I graduated high school. And so it was like, by the time I was 22, it sounds ridiculous, but I was like burnt out on trying to do that, on being in the van, on doing my own music. And also I met my wife, and, I wanted to start like an adult life of paying bills and being a real person. And so, yeah, we got married and got in a truck and drove to California into a house that we rented, not even having seen it. My uncle, who lives here in California, my only relative out here, went and looked at it for me and said, yeah, it's in a decent area. You should get this one because the price was good.
Nice.
And yeah, that's what we did. My wife didn't have a job. I didn't have a job out here lined up. We just went for it. And so that was scary, but it felt like I needed to do something different. I needed to maybe just be a guitar player for a while and not worry about, my own music, my records, all that type of stuff. And ended up being a good move.
Yeah, of course, obviously. So when you went out to LA, I mean, I know the kind of the backstory a little bit about session work and kind of working with different artists and everything, like Taylor Hicks and then getting to Raphael Saadiq and all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
But were you kind of just like open book, kind of like I'll do whatever? Because you can play so many different styles. I'm sure you got work pretty quick, right?
Yeah, well, I was open to anything. That was part of the reason I wanted to do it too, was to expand my horizons and just get thrown into a bunch of different, up until that time I'd never done anything but my own music. So I really didn't know what it even meant to be a sideman. I didn't know what it meant to go on a session in a studio for somebody else. Like, I'd only ever been in the studio to play my own music, to record my stuff. So I had a lot to learn. So I was totally open to all of that. It took a while. Like, when I first got here, I was going out every night, shaking hands and kissing babies and trying to get gigs and things like that, and going to jams. And, I'd get called for little things in town, come play with this singer songwriter, do this. Here's a little session, $100, $150. Here's this. And it snowballed, but it took the first year before I got like substantial work, like, good sessions, and then my first like road touring gig, like with a band signed on a major label. So for that first year I had a job, and it's still the only job I've ever had in my whole life. I was testing video games for THQ. And
Oh,
yeah, so it could have been worse. And but yeah, I was open to all of it, and once I got that first touring gig, I kind of didn't look back. From there on, it was always like, another gig would come up. I go on the road with somebody else. I always had sessions going on. I made a lot of friends by then with musical directors and other producers. So they would pass your name to someone else, and then that person would call you. And by then it got self-sustaining. But yeah, that first year was pretty difficult.
yeah. So is the game kind of never say no? Like, people always say that when you move a place like
Yeah.
that, you're just like, yes, of course, I'm there, kind of thing.
Well, I feel, even not just that you need to do that because you have responsibilities and making a living and you're trying to establish a foothold in a new city and all that. I feel that way in general, just about becoming a better musician when you're at that age. When I'm 22 years old, there's no reason I should turn down any gig because I'm above it or I don't like it. You can learn something from literally every gig. And that was the way I approached it. Like, okay, I've never played, even if it was, a pop gig here in town playing a wedding or something, and I had to learn a bunch of Journey tunes. Well, you know what? I'd never learned a bunch of Journey tunes. I'm going to get something from that experience, and so that was the way I approached all that stuff back then.
Do you remember anything about being that age, that stuff that was challenging to you that you really were working on at that time? Do you remember specific, guitar acrobatic stuff? That's because watching you play, it's so fun to watch you play. Like, as a viewer, it's fun because, not only because of being a fan of music and being a guitarist and everything, but also because it's so effortless. It seems effortless. And I know you're probably like, dude, there's some shit that I do that's like, woo, but like, do you remember what you were working on at that time in your life?
Yeah, I do. I was obsessed at that time in growth, and just the overall point of like, let me learn stuff I don't know. So for me, my biggest obsession was being better at sessions. Uh, Mike Landau, the greatest session guitar player of all time, became a friend, and he recommended me for a session
Wow.
because he liked my playing, and we became friends. And I really had not felt comfortable yet as a session guitar player. And he sent me into this session, and I felt like I just was not prepared for that level of session. And, I got in there and they had a chart for me, and it probably said something like, so that's what I played. It just had the chords written, and it was that kind of groove. So that's what I played. And I thought, nailed it. And I left, and it wasn't until I like went and saw Mike on a session that I realized, oh, wait a minute, I need to be like coming up with real parts and like adding something to this. It wasn't just that I didn't make any mistakes and I played the chords that they had written on the piece of paper. It was like, I just didn't know that. I didn't know when the producer said, okay, can you do that thing, but make it more edge like that I had to, give them. Or something like that, some sort of part or some sort of thing I didn't speak that language. So when I realized that I didn't speak that language, I became obsessed with bettering myself in that way, learning everything I could about, the music that I maybe hadn't spent as much time on in my life. Cause I was really well versed in blues, R&B, jazz, and rootsy stuff, but I wasn't super versed in like more contemporary rock, definitely pop music, more contemporary R&B. I was into old school soul and R&B, but not like 80s R&B, Michael Jackson stuff, like the way, Paul Jackson Jr. plays guitar, or David Williams and these guys. So there was a lot for me to learn, and I dove way into that, and that became my kind of obsession for a while.
Okay. Where did your bebop chops come from? Like, what age did that start to seep in?
I got into bebop probably starting like 15, 16,
Oh, wow.
because um well, I always liked it. My dad's not a jazzer, and he's not a musician, but he's a huge music collegist. He just loves music. Both my parents, so they had a giant record collection. And so every now and then, instead of Albert King or the Rolling Stones, it would be Giant Steps or Round Midnight, or, Kind of Blue or something like that would come on. And it would always pique my interest. But it felt like, oh, that's another language. I'll never figure that out. And actually, I don't tell this story often, but some of the adults that I played with back then as a kid, there were more jazz background, and they kind of pushed me a little bit to like, hey, you should listen to some of this. And especially two guys, Rick Cafaro and Mike Natioka, the other keyboard player, guitar player, singer in the band, and the bass player. Their parents were jazzers, and in South Florida they grew up like playing with the South Florida Jazz Elite, and Ira Sullivan was a legend down there who just passed away, actually. And they played with him. So I remember them taking me once to see them play with him. And they played Charlie Parker, Now's the Time, which is just a blues.
Mm-hmm.
But they asked me to play. So I played, and it was when I realized, excuse me, that wait a minute, this is all connected. Like the blues that I play and whatever Charlie Parker's doing here, it's all the same, just the chords are different, but man, it's just music. And that was what turned the page for me. Like, okay, first I'm going to listen to Charlie Parker. So I learned Now's the Time, and then I learned other tunes, and that was the beginning of it for me. And it was when it just hooked me, that feeling, that swung feel, the triplets, the whole thing. It took over the way I played guitar. When I started adding that into all the blues stuff that I had been learning and playing, I felt like I had found a new like secret magic thing, and I still feel that way slightly.
Oh, man. I mean, that's the thing is like anytime I hear you play, the thing that really grabs my ears about you is how hard you swing.
Thank you.
Because that's not an easy thing to be doing. And especially when you're doing it by yourself, playing changes and you can hear the changes. Like that's the one thing that I love that I've learned from you from listening, and how to approach changes and to make the listener hear the changes without needing a combo behind you or anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's a crucial aspect, I think, of being able to tell a story with a solo. You gotta, not only are you saying what you need to say, you also have to acknowledge what's going on around you. I mean, there's chords happening here, there's other things going on. You have to tip your hat to them and acknowledge that they exist. So I always practiced with that in mind. I was never one to sit down and just start going. It was always, I hear a groove, and it was always, and then so naturally I'm going to hear changes, and it was always a song to me. There was no noodling. It was always like, even when I was just noodling, it was in a form. I had a form in my head. I had a groove in my head, and I was playing as if I was playing with an ensemble. And yeah, I think that's a big part of the reason maybe my playing is as conversational as it is, and maybe that I swing the way that I do, is because I always play like that. That's just my natural inclination, is to start playing as if I'm in a band situation.
Mm-hmm. It comes across beautifully. I mean, every time, even when you're playing in the band, like it's almost like You could just like be everyone cut out and just be like, I'm gonna keep these changes going just for 2 bars, and
Yeah.
you'll know where to come in because you'll know where I'm going with it, kind of thing. That's
Yeah.
not easy to do. As a guitarist, it takes years of kind of just shedding on that stuff.
It does. I mean, and it takes time being comfortable, with your time too. Like that's the other side of it. Like just feeling like you're never going to get lost or stuck. Not even with the harmony, but just with the time. Like I've built up, yeah, it's like muscle memory that is very quick to react to when I take a turn. You know what I mean? So yeah, if I play, and then all of a sudden I go, and then I straighten out. It's like it's always going to add up and land on where I want it to land on, even though it's a complete improvisation. And yeah, you're right. That only comes from the amount of time put into it, and the whatever the hours. I hate saying that too, but it really is. It's not a cliche. Like there is no substitute for just the amount of actual time you put into this thing.
Yeah, and not only that, but like, if you want to learn licks and cop licks from Josh Smith, like transcribe his records. That's one of the greatest teachers. Like you'll get to the point where you can conceptualize the changes and then put those in different ideas for different songs that you're writing or different tunes that you're playing over. I always found one of the biggest teachers for me, and you can tell me what was for you, but like triads have been my Bible.
Yeah.
My Bible, man. Like, and not only just from understanding inversions and being able to harmonically express yourself a little bit more intelligently on the instrument, but like, when I was playing in a fusion band, they're like, let's play Teen Town. I was like, how am I going to approach playing over these changes and make it interesting? I'm like, well, start with the triad, and then add the tensions. You know what I mean? Like, how do you feel the same way about? I mean, I have this like love relationship with triads.
To some degree, yes. I'm not a guy I never ran triads, in each inversion up and down the neck religiously. It wasn't something I did. I was always more concerned with like the grips that I found myself using the most, walking those up and down the neck. And so maybe it's not triads, maybe it's full chords, whatever. But it was like walking those up and down the neck diatonically became the most important exercise for me because I was looking for freedom within, at the time as a kid, the pentatonic scale. So I wanted to be, when I'm playing BB King, and I needed to go to the 2 to know I had it right there. If I'm playing Albert King, that I had the 2 here, you know what I mean? Or whatever. And that was all I was concerned about back at the time. But it actually really, really strengthened my comfort on the neck because there's nowhere I can't be in whatever pentatonic position of the 5 positions and be lost, and those were the 2 things for me that made me the most comfortable on the fretboard. The pentatonic scale, and then literally just running all my chord, the cowboy chords, running them up and down the neck, in every one of my shapes as a major scale. I felt like once I had that down, it was like, man, I'm never going to get lost. That was what I was most needing. Yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like that's like it's a map to the fretboard almost, in a way, like when you start doing that stuff.
Oh, dude, I would sit there and do what I just did. I'd be playing blues, and I'd make myself like, okay, instead of here, I'd be here. And I just randomly tell myself, oh, you got to play a chord, play B half diminished. Oh, I've got one right here. You know what I mean? Give me an F sharp minor, give me the 6, it's like, I've got one right here. So it was like, I did that in every one of my soloing spots so that it was like, I could never get lost. Yeah.
That's so brilliant, man. That's so awesome. It's so simple, but it's so like profound at the same time because it's just pushing you more forward to your goals. And like, how did you handle when you started working on like jazz and bebop and everything? How did you handle wrapping your head around like jazz harmony, like expanding the palette?
Yeah, I think of it in 2 ways. Like for me, it really is 2 separate categories. I think of all the things I can play over each chord and that's one category. So I've got like my filing cabinet of like, oh, it's a minor 7 flat 5 chord. I play this, or this or this. It's a regular minor 7 chord. Well, then I've got 20 of these things. It's a regular dominant chord. I've got 30 things that I can play over that chord, and whatever. Those things stack up, and I've got a bunch of things, modes, scales, arpeggios, ideas that I know I've picked up over the years that play on these chords. And then the other side is, how do I create a path from one chord to the next through these changes that either diatonically are connected, or in jazz cases most of the time are not diatonically connected, or some most of the time it's half and half. You have chords from the scale and chords not from the scale. And that's where I like to expend most of my brain power, because I feel like this side takes care of itself. I know what to play when a chord lands, but I don't always know how to make fucking this chord connect to that chord. So that's where I try to spend my brain power, which is like, how am I going to 2-5-1 this? Am I going to use a diminished chord or an augmented chord to create tension? Or am I just going to chromatically create some tension here and connect some dots? And those, they're separated into those two categories for me.
Did that stuff get dust on it? Like when you were starting to do touring acts, in terms of like, you get away from playing jazz and then you got to come back and knock the dust off when you're touring for 2 years? Because I'm sure when you get into a situation like playing on a big tour internationally or just across the states or whatever, like if you're not using it's like that whole 40-year-old virgin, if you don't is it true you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing? But did you feel that way where you were like, oh crap, I got to get back in the shed now?
Just a little bit. Yeah. I mean, when you're on a gig, it depends on the kind of gig, but like, some gigs you go out and you have to play exactly the same every night. That's the job, is to be perfect basically, and to never miss a mark and to do everything. So there's not any improv happening there. Even maybe when it's your solo spot, they don't want you up there reharmonizing their song. They want you to play a solo that the audience is going to enjoy. So that's normally a pentatonic solo with melodic aspects to it. You know what I mean? So, if you don't practice that stuff often, it can get rusty for sure. But I mean, that's what I do all the time. When I'm sitting down, when I get off with you and I go back in the house and watch sports, probably I'll have my guitar on my lap and I'll be playing, like I said earlier, I'll be playing some changes in my head, you know what I mean? And I'll be just making connections happen and trying to work my way through them. So I even when I'm on the road, that's what I do in my room. I'm just, I don't think of it as practice. That's just what I do.
Yeah, you love the instrument. I mean, you can tell, man. Like anytime I've seen you on like that pedal show or any interviews, it's like you just, and that's the thing. And I mentioned to you before we started, the thing that I love about watching you and hearing you talk about your excitement for music and just your passion for it. I see you as like you mentioned, like your father or your parents being a musicologist. Like, did you, since we're the same age, like I grew up on the Seattle thing. Like that's how I cut my teeth. I just like rewound Nevermind to learn how to move power chords. That was the beginning of it for me. Did you do that stuff a little bit too? And then you jumped more into advanced kind of guitar playing? It seems like you kind of propelled pretty quickly as a guitarist.
Yeah, it went fast for me because number one, I'm an obsessive personality. So when I get into anything, I'm going to try to learn as much as I can about it and try to be good at it like quickly. So it's like, right now I'm drawing every day during the pandemic. So I'm trying to get better every day. I'm getting better tools, ordering new pencils off Amazon, finding out what this pencil, why this guy used that pencil, whatever. That's my personality. So I practiced all the time as a kid and I just wanted to get better. But I was lucky. My parents like good music. So I was hearing that. You're right. I mean, the Seattle thing came in, right at the tail end of middle school or whatever. So it was heavy metal, and I had my Columbia Records subscription.
Columbia House?
Yeah, Columbia House Records. And I would get, Guns N' Roses and Warrant and Slaughter and Skid Row. And then it switched to, Alice in Chains and Nirvana, But at the same time, the teacher I was going to was a jazz and blues guy. And the music my parents were listening to were Jimi Hendrix, Albert King, the Rolling Stones, Allman Brothers, Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, and then, like I said, some Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis. So it was like just good music all the time. Um, so it just all kind of ran together for me. And there was definitely a moment, probably around 12, where I realized I enjoyed that stuff more than I enjoyed the metal and the alternative that I would listen to with my friends. Not that I disliked that music. I didn't. I had a lot of that music. And to this day, I mean, Nirvana was important to me as a kid, you know, and I remember buying Metallica Black Album and Master of Puppets, you know, like those things that I'm not just, you know, that happened. I bought that music. I liked it, you know, but there was a moment when I realized, no, this other stuff, I just enjoy it more, you know, and by that time I was about to start gigging too. And once you start gigging something, then it's like cemented. It was like, you know, my first gigs were playing blues and improvising, you know, playing solos and the crowd clapping for me. And then that was it. I was like, no going back after that. Yeah.
Man, it's funny to me because thinking about that era, like of our lives being 12 and 13 years old and being in high school too, even I remember the first album that, like, because I was in that same camp, like where I was skirting the lines between starting to get interested in improvisation, and that's when I heard Fish, because I have older siblings, and the Grateful Dead. Like my older sister was a huge Deadhead, and so was my older brother, but then he like showed me some Fish stuff, and that was harder edged Grateful Dead to me, you know what I mean? So I just like, oh, okay, cool. So like they're improvising. I need to learn how to play that stuff. It seems like there's a lot of facility involved. But the one record I will say, man, that blew my mind, that I was like, this is different, is Tool's Undertow.
Okay.
The first time I heard that album, and this, because I'm a huge Pearl Jam, that's like Pearl Jam's like it's like the Wood Brothers and Pearl Jam are like my favorite bands.
Okay.
But it's interesting because like that at that time, I never understood you can detune your guitar. Like you can detune your instrument and make it sound growly and interesting. And only now today, like now I play in C standard. I don't play in standard tuning anymore because I just like that sound.
Gotcha.
But did you experiment with stuff? Like it seems like you are kind of, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you like to tinker a bit. Is that something that you did as a young guitarist too? Like with gear and with your instruments and stuff?
With gear, yeah, not so much with my guitars. I was always afraid I was going to fuck them up.
Me too.
Because I try to be, I'm a little bit obsessive about intonation, and I was always worried that if I messed stuff up, my guitar all of a sudden was never going to come back and would never be in tune again. I was always, it was irrational, but I always felt like that was going to happen if I messed with my guitars. But tone wise, yeah, I wanted to try everything. I wanted to know, why does this sound like this? Why did this guy use that? What's the reason? Why does that sound like that? You know? And so, yeah, I've always been that way. Tunings wise, I will say I'm a slacker. I've never spent a lot of time in alternate tunings. You know, yeah, I can play slide in open E or open D, open G. So I know them a little bit, but it's never been something I've really been comfortable doing. I'm also maybe the worst capo guitar player on the face of the earth. Like the second you put that capo on my guitar, I feel like I never find the right key and I have no idea what's going on this neck. You know, it drives me crazy. Yep. I can't, even though I know in my mind it's the simplest thing ever. The second I put that thing on there, it all of a sudden looks like I'm looking in French at my guitar. I can't figure it out. Yeah.
Dude, that's how I feel. Like Joey convinced me to start working in open C, which is what led to C standard. And I had to like chart out the fretboard. And every night when I was watching TV, I was trying to figure out voicings and stuff. And that took me 2 years before I started to feel comfortable playing in open C and playing the
So you're
pentatonic.
playing in open C, not just tuned down to C standard pitch.
I'm doing both. So my Telly's in C standard, and I have a Strat. I have two Sur guitars that I use for this, but the Strat is in open C and the Telly's in C standard.
Gotcha.
So you get that, like, I don't know, that Blake Mills record, that for the Hi Ho record.
Yeah.
Like that was a huge pivotal moment for me to understand that I didn't just have to stay in standard tuning if I wanted to explore different sonic space and all that. I mean, are there seminal records for you, whether it's blues records or jazz records? Are there like 3 albums that you always come back to? Like I have a couple that I always come back to.
Yeah, yeah. Albert King, Livewire, Blues Power. I come back to that almost daily for the entirety of my life. There's nobody I listen to on a daily basis more than Albert King. Like almost every day of my life, I've listened to Albert King at some point, just because nothing hits me like Albert King does. I wouldn't even say he's my biggest influence, but there's just something about as a fan listening to Albert King that just makes me. I just get stopped in my tracks when I listen to him play, and nobody else does it like that. Um, BB King, Blues is King was
Mhm.
important, really important for me. Also live at the Regal, but Blues is King was a little more important. They're around the same time, live records. Axis Bold as Love was one that just I listened to literally every day for probably a year straight when I was 12 years old. Not that I didn't love Are You Experienced or Electric Ladyland or Band the Gypsies, but there was something about Axis Bold as Love. It was short and sweet and self-contained, and it was just like magic to me. The
Mhm.
songs were perfection. The whole record was. I was obsessed with the production and the playing. Stevie was just everything. I listened to everything Stevie all the time. Um, and then other than that, it was like, yeah, things would come and go, like George Benson or Wes Montgomery, Charlie Christian. I went big phases of Charlie Christian and Wes Montgomery. And then I found Danny Gatton, and that was a major life changer. But there's no like one record that's the one. I listen to all of it. So yeah, 3 records would probably like honestly, the 3 records I probably listened to the most in my life were that Albert King, BB King, and Jimi Hendrix, Axis Bold as Love. Yeah.
What do you think it is about us guitarists why we gravitate to Jimmy so much? I mean,
Oh,
I've thought about this so often in terms of like, why is it that I mean, there's so many things, obviously. I know it sounds like a stupid question in a way, but like, I mean, because for me, like every time I listen to Jimmy, I there's this there's a tone element to it too. Not only just his playing and everything and how he revolutionized the instrument, but what is it for you
oh,
that Jimmy speaks to you?
it's a combination of he number one. It was like, okay, imagine somebody who, yeah, changes the face of the instrument. All of a sudden, this instrument does things you've never heard it do before and sounds in a way you've never heard it sound before. And he makes records that sound a way you've never heard sound before. Already, that's a generational impact that can't be measured. But then just think about how many of these songs are unbelievably great. The
Right.
songs are ridiculous, and they all came out in this little short window. It's like when you think he wrote Purple Haze and Fire and Foxy Lady and Little Wing and Axis Bold as Love and Wait Until Tomorrow and Burning in the Midnight Lamp in 3 years, and that's not even half of them. Manic Depression,
Mhm.
it's like it just keeps going and going and going, and it's ridiculous to me. I don't think anyone has ever had a period like that. Maybe Stevie Wonder, where it's just like, that much great music in such a short time that truly changed the face of any other music that was happening around it at that time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're guitar players. So of course, that's the biggest moment to us. Same way sax players would say Giant Steps, or yeah, probably keyboard players and singers say Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life, Intervisions, Talking Book, that whole period.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I don't think his impact has ever been equaled. I think the only one that even comes close is Eddie Van Halen, but still Eddie wouldn't be Eddie if not for Jimmy. Even though Jimmy wasn't his guy, still Jimmy's responsible for half of the tones he went for, I mean the ability to even think like that. So
Yeah.
he just changed the game more than anyone ever has.
My benchmark for when I'm setting up for a gig is if it doesn't sound like The Wind Cries Mary, my clean tone doesn't sound like that, it's not ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like the clean tone for me that I'm just like chasing all the time. It's oh man. That
And
it's
it was
just
like underneath, it was a fundamental level of everything he did too. You could also, for me, it was like I could always feel, oh man, he's listening to Guitar Slim. He listened to Albert Collins. He listened to T-Bone Walker. He listened to BB King and Albert King a lot. Like he knows his shit, and he's taking it into the future. It was like, man, I don't think there's been ever by anybody like that.
no, there never will be again, maybe. I
I
mean,
don't
it's
think so.
so relevant still, the music, if you listen to bands like Rival Sons and all these other bands that have this great music, it's like it probably wouldn't be here if he wasn't ever on this planet. Maybe. Who
No.
knows? I mean, it's crazy, man. Um, what funk records? I know that you're into funk and
Oh
R&B
yeah.
and stuff, man. So one of my favorite funk records is Robert Palmer sneaking Sally through the alley.
Oh yeah, yeah. The
So
Meters and Lowell George.
hell yeah, son. So what's some stuff you think I might not have heard? Because since you are my
That you
musicologist.
might not have heard. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm big on I have a few categories of funk. There's like James Brown is his own world, and the top of the heap, like James Brown is James Brown, and it's the best, you know. But then you've got after James Brown, you got, you know, Parliament Funkadelic and Sly and the Family Stone, and you know, the Ohio Players. And man, I love the Ohio Players. I'm a huge Ohio Players fan. Earth,
Skin
Wind, and
tight.
Fire. Tower of Power is important for me. I love Tower Power. Those two guys are really important for me. Al McKay with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Bruce Conte with Tower of Power. But then also, like, you know, Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin in the 70s when they had funky bands with Cornell Dupree and, you know, and these guys and Bobby Womack. You know, God, it goes on and on and on and on. If I can give guys something to listen to, maybe they don't know, is check out Little Beaver. If you don't know Little Beaver, check out Little Beaver.
Never heard of it. That's great.
Okay, so Little Beaver is a guitar player from Miami, legend, who played on a lot of the TK Records stuff, which was like the Miami soul sound, like Betty Wright, Clean Up Woman, stuff like that. But he had a big career with Frank Williams and the Rocketeers, which Frank Williams was a sax player, but Little Beaver was the singer and the guitar player. And unbelievable guitar player, funk rhythm guitar player, unbelievable tunes, unbelievable singing, blow your mind. Yeah,
dude. And so how did the Raphael Saadiq thing happen? Like, because were you playing? Because did you play on The Way I See It? Did you play on that record?
I didn't play on The Way I See It. I played on the next one, but not
love that record. Oh,
he plays everything on The Way I See It pretty much himself. But that's why I got called. So basically, I knew who Raphael Saadiq was, and I had heard Instant Vintage, which was the record previous, but it was a long time had passed between Instant Vintage and The Way I See It. And Instant Vintage was like the birth of neo soul. Like, you know, when D'Angelo and all that, Raphael's really the father of that stuff. He hates that now. It's not his thing, but he did kind of start it. He's got to get his credit for that. I don't think he gets enough credit. But he started making this soul record, and I heard about it before it came out, The Way I See It. And yeah, I got a call that he wanted to have a band that was more old school. We were going to wear suits and ties and play the whole thing, you know, like we're a Motown or Stax, you know. And they sent me 2 songs, and the first one was Sure Hope You Mean It. And I heard that song and I was like, I have to play in this band. I have to go on the road with and that was the only, and so, yeah, I went down and met with him, and I think he was looking for somebody like me. I don't want to say a white guy, but I think he was looking for Steve Cropper, you know, to come in and really knew that shit inside and out and would do the job. Because he had Rob Bacon there playing guitar as well, who is a great guitar player and a little bit more from the Prince and gospel background, soul, different, more 80s kind of. So he thought, okay, I can cover all the the really the partsy stuff, and Rob could just be Rob. And then when we do the more neo soul stuff or the Tony material, that's Rob shines on that stuff, you know. And yeah, it worked really good. It was just really fun to be in that band, and it's just great music. Yeah.
Oh my God, that record! The first time I heard 100-Yard Dash.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude, that even how like that album is recorded, like,
yeah, it's really great.
Holy crap! If you guys haven't listened to that album, oh man, it's a goodie. It's a real good one.
What's crazy about that record is the guy who mixed that record. He had never mixed a record before that record.
What?
His name is Chuck. He's a friend of Raphael's, and he kind of learned on the fly mixing that record. And it kind of, being a non-experienced mix engineer, it was like it freed him up to he just was like going to try to get the old sound in whatever way he thought possible. He had no idea what tools to use and what was, so he just did it he really was just going by ear and by feel. And he
Oh,
ended up hitting on something that, like, yeah, this record sounds more Motown than any record. All the people who try to cop that shit, nobody's copped it like that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
it's super authentic, man. Like down to I mean, it sounds like a mono recording, like it does sound like an old
Yeah.
Motown record. And I think that's what hit me immediately when I heard that. I was like,
What's
like,
funny is that guy, Chuck, basically then he mixed the next record, and he mixed some other records for people. Once they heard that stuff, he got hired to mix stuff, but he basically stopped being an engineer because he's really a video game programmer. And him and Raphael started a video game company called Ilphonic Games, and now that's he has a full-time job. He makes games, like he just made the Predator game for PlayStation 4. He makes a lot of games, and Raphael is co-owner of that company, but that's Chuck's full-time job now. Yeah.
oh man, do you still are you a gamer? Do you still game? Like,
Yeah, I'm a gamer. My son's an enormous gamer, but I am a gamer. Yeah.
okay. What any games like recently that you played that have totally blown you away? I mean, we could talk about this too, man. I'm super into that stuff too.
Well, the new Call of Duty is cool. We lucked out. We got the new Xbox Series X,
Oh,
so
nice.
that one's impressive on Series X. I haven't played the new Assassin's Creed yet, but my son is playing it. He's playing Cyberpunk. I think he's a little disappointed that they rushed it out and it's not 100% ready to go, it seems like. But he's still enjoying it. My biggest game in the last few years has been Destiny 2. I was big into Destiny 2. I like Bungie. I loved Halo. So I'm a big fan of their work.
Yeah. Have you done any stuff for like music for video games?
No, I never have. I would love to get into that.
Oh man, yeah. That what a perfect marriage, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask you because we're running out of time. So from the beginning, like when you were talking about playing your own music when you were a young kid, were you singing then too, or were you just doing like instrumental stuff?
Yeah, no, I started singing pretty much right away. Like after the first 6 months of gigging, I remember people telling me, you should just pick one song, sing it, because you're going to need this in the future. You want to start right now when it's going to be painful, but start to get comfortable. And it was very painful. My voice had barely changed, and, I was cracking on the mic and sound like a little kid trying to sing blues, and it was ugly, but I'm grateful that I pushed myself off the ledge and just did it, and so yeah, I started pretty early, and I was writing songs a lot early. So once I kind of established a band thing happened, and I went from going around playing with different bands to playing with this regular group of people, and it became kind of, it sounds ridiculous, but it became kind of my band. So yeah, then it started to be I'd pick the songs. So then I started writing songs. So I mean, some of my first originals that I was playing on gigs, yeah, I was 13, and we were playing iTunes, and so yeah, I would try to sing them.
That's awesome. I was wondering that because I was like, was there a moment where someone was like, all right, who's gonna sing? All right, Josh, you're the guitar player, you're gonna be the front man kind of thing.
Well, the band that I played with, we had this guy, Rick Cafaro, who played guitar and keyboards and sang, and he had a great voice. So he sang, it was all covers, but he sang really well. So I would sing, it just kind of, I eased myself in. I'd sing the songs I wrote. I'd sing 1 or 2 songs a set, 1 or 2 songs a night. And then next thing you know, I'd sing 3 and then 4, until I got comfortable pretty much.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm at a default. Somebody was like, well, I can't sing, so you're going to have to do it. I'm like, what? I just wanted to play guitar.
I still don't feel comfortable. It's not the most comfortable thing for me. Playing a guitar is very comfortable. Singing is always like work. It feels like work.
Me too, man. Me too. Well, I mean, you sound great. I mean, it's like, every time I've heard you singing, it sounds great. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, because we're both pedal nerds and
yeah,
and gear nerds, man, there's been a couple pieces of gear this year that have, I mean, I think we're living in the platinum era of guitar gear. Is there any, like, what's a couple pedals that have totally floored you this year that came out of left field that you're like, ooh?
Yeah, the Chase Bliss preamp pedal, the Mark II. super impressed. It's going to be, I just added it to my medium board, which actually I'll have back tomorrow. So I was blown away, so much so that I'm willing to give up that much real estate on the board for it because it's a large pedal. But it's really impressive. And then the other one that, honestly, the most blown away I've been by any pedal in the last couple of years is the Poly Expressive Digit. And I've just been trying to figure out a way to get it into my rig and maximize the potential of it, which I think I've now done too. So yeah, when I get this new board actually tomorrow back, it'll have that added on it and the Chase Bliss added on it. And I think those pedals are incredible. The Poly Expressive Digit, I think, is the best digital pedal being made in the world right now. Like, it's so powerful, and
I
it's
don't know if
daunting. Maybe
what is it? I don't know if I'm familiar with it.
it's you may have seen it. It's just a big square with a huge screen. Looks almost like an Etch-a-Sketch. 2 knobs on the top and
Yep.
two squares, and it's like, you know, kind of like the H9 delays and reverbs and modulations. You can load IRs in it. It does kind of anything, but it's so powerful. Like, compared to the H9, it's like having 8 of them in one of this thing. And it has 4 inputs and 4 outputs, and you can route anything. So like, I can load up let's say load up a tape echo algorithm, and I can have it, you know, input 1 comes in, hits the tape thing, and that goes to output 1 and 2. And then input 2 comes in and hits a reverb, and that reverb just goes back to the tape echo and goes out output 1 and 2. So it's just reverb going through the delay. And you draw it basically and make all these. So it's 4 inputs and outputs, and you can route anything, and you can open tons of modules, tons of algorithms at the same time. And they all sound incredible, but there's a learning curve to it. Because it does so much. It's not just you plug it in and, oh, here's my preset and this sounds great, or you turn it off. It's not like that, but I don't think there's any pedal quite as deep as it. And for how much it costs, oh my God, it's such a steal. It's not even that expensive for how powerful it is. It's amazing.
Man. When did you get into using MIDI too? Like, how was that pretty recent in the past couple years, or?
No, that's probably 15 years ago. Or 17 years when I met Bob Bradshaw when I moved here to California, and I got my first Bob Bradshaw rig. You know, that was my introduction to MIDI. And I'd started to hang out with Landau, and I had seen him in the studio, you know, with his Bradshaw switcher, and he'd be controlling presets on a Lexicon reverb and a PCM 42 delay. And so it was like, oh, I want to do that. So my first Bradshaw rig had the full controller and rack, and I had an Eventide Eclipse rack unit. Yeah. That was my first big rack unit and MIDI thing. And the Bradshaw thing was a game changer for me, because I'm always trying to have maximum dynamics and signal flow, like clear purity of signal flow. And nothing is more pure to me than the loop switcher, because when no pedals are on, it's like you're going from guitar straight into amp, you know, and that's what I like, because most of the time, at most, I have 1 or 2 pedals on at the same time, but I like to have 10 pedals. You know, I like to have options and things, and it made a big difference, the clarity of tone. And then, then the ability to be on the road. I mean, I remember clearly going on my first tour with that Bradshaw, and in rehearsals for that tour, programming in the whole set list from the tour, and having, you know, I hit button 1 and it's the first sound of that song. Hit button 2, it's the pre-chorus. Button 3, it's my solo in that song, and it flips 10 different things and does this and that. And it was like, man, I'm not going back from that. It's too easy and it's too great, you know? Yeah.
I'm so like reluctant. I'm on the like cusp of like going into the whole MIDI world, because I just got the Chase Bliss MK2 like, I don't know, a month ago.
Okay.
And man, because I'm a huge fan of fuzz. I mean, I have a drawer next to me full of a bunch of fuzz pedals, like the Burkos Effects Third Stone, which I freaking love.
It's a great pedal. Yeah.
Jesse Davies stuff, like Mythos pedal stuff. But man, that Chase Bliss pedal, the fuzz tones I've been getting out of that thing are leaps and bounds beyond. But I would love to be able to control it with a gig rig type of a situation where I can start incorporating that stuff in. But I'm like, I like stepping on boxes. I'm an old man. Like, how am
Yeah,
I
well,
gonna,
like that's a great example. That Chase Bliss with the pedal board, the new pedal board. Yeah, I programmed a button just to turn off and on the fuzz individually on the Chase Bliss. You know what I mean? You know, and also to jump between gated or not gated on the fuzz on the Chase Bliss. You know, things like that. Yeah. So, dude, just dive in.
Are you a fan of the fuzz? Like, I love it when my amp sounds like it's about to implode kind of fuzz.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
woo. So besides, like, what have you been using in the past before that pedal for fuzz tones?
Oh, well, I mean that's not my main fuzz because that one's a little too extreme for me. I like the gated setting, but it's a little more big muffy than like the I'm a fuzz face guy, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I mean my main fuzz. I used the Burkos for years. After the Burkos, I used the BOG, which is Deep Trip BOG fuzz, which is really good. But the last 3 years, it's been the Myriad, the Vemoram, my signature fuzz,
Mm-hmm.
which I helped design,
Yeah.
and that's my favorite fuzz without question. It's got my
Yeah.
name on it.
Well, that's how I kind of met you. I did that video on Instagram. That pedal has so much headroom. It's so loud. When I first plugged that thing in, I was like, okay, I've heard this is loud, and it doesn't surprise me because Josh likes a lot of headroom. So,
A lot
when
of headroom.
man, but it's what's cool about that pedal too is I loved how there was that little tone, because I borrowed my buddy's, not the full size Myriad, the smaller Myriad
Yeah.
fuzz, and I was so amazed how much that tone control can help once you bring that fuzz all the way up, because I was like, oh no, it got a little bit dark, and then I was like, oh, hold on, yep, there we go. Like,
It
that,
does a lot. That's why I mean that's why it's called the Myriad. Like if you bias the germanium transistor super hot and then turn the gain almost all the way down, but the feel and the tone up, it'll sound almost like a tube screamer. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Whereas if you bias the germanium down and turn the fuzz way up, it'll get all spitty. You know, it does so many things. But yeah, it has a ton of volume. And I
Oh.
understand that it's not for everybody.
Well, it's kind of like the Chula too, like you like a lot of
Also
that.
not for everybody.
But that stuff that's why it's a signature pedal, man. It's supposed to be what your ears hear, and that's because I mean, does the world need another Tube Screamer exact clone? You know what I mean?
Nope.
No. So, but have you played through that Cornerstone Gladio?
Yeah, I actually have one here. I was impressed. Cool pedal.
Man, yeah, I was really shocked because I mean, I've tried a couple different. I played through a 2-Rock now, not crazy one, but the studio signature, and that was like a midlife crisis where I sold a bunch of stuff to get that.
Yeah.
And just plugging into that amp, I was like, oh wow, this is what it's like when you're playing HD kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because you can't hide. You can't hide behind shit with that.
Well, that's a crucial part of my whole philosophy and sound. Like I don't want to be able to hide. I want everybody to hear every note and little inflection in my playing. I want them to hear it all. So that involves having headroom, dynamics, less compression. So everything I play has to fit into that box for me. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you using for a slapback these days? Because your slapback tone is always great.
The last few years, it's mostly been the Flashback Mini.
Oh, really?
Because I made a tone print for them, and it's really good. Like we tweaked it with the editor, and so we basically used the 2290 sound, and I tweaked it, and yeah, that's pretty much I also have one in the H9 that I really like, but I mean, like, there it is, like that, and the Chula is my sound. It sounds like me.
Yes, it does. Man, it's the slapback thing. It's funny. I've talked to several. I've had a couple builders on here, like Zach Broyles and Mason Marangella and Emilio from Cornerstone, and I've talked to them about, like, I want to really love delay. Like I've bought and sold so many delay pedals, Josh. Like
I'm with you.
I don't know, and I've been interested in checking out the Mood, just because I've heard so many good things about that. But like, I really just want a pedal this big that just does slapback. And that's
Dude,
like,
get a flashback mini and load my tone print on there. You're done.
I
As far as
know.
that goes, because that's what I do. I need that slapback for my normal thing, like my soloing and my normal shit. And then I like to have a vibey delay that's longer, but that gets out of my way. I don't like delays that step all over your shit. Like, so I guess maybe 6 years ago, I stumbled into, I tried a real Echo Rec first, and then Catlin Bread came out with their Echo Rec, and then now Strymon has the Volante. I have one of those. I've got different. That style suits me really well because it's vibey and sounds amazing, but it also gets out of your way. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
so like here on this little board, I have the Catlin Bread Echo Rec, but it's like I can have almost no mix, you know, man, and that's all I need, you know. And other than that, for other delays, they're all song dependent. I'll only use other delays if I need it for a part or a certain song, and those always come from the H9 because I program up something for a specific sound or thing. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, it sounds like you usually spend, I would gather you labor over the stuff before you go on the road, right? You really want to dial in everything.
I do a little bit. I just because I like to be free on the gig. I like to know that everything works and and that, you know, my shit's together. Like I just like it to be right, you know. There's a sound in my head. I want to be able for it to come out. But also I want gear that's flexible, like on the stage where, you know, if I want to add something, I can add something and it stacks good. Or, you know, I just like simple stuff that works together. My pedal boards look complicated because of the switching and the MIDI and all that, but at their heart, it's very simple stuff. It's very simple pedals controlled in it by MIDI. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But
Is it,
I do work it out for sure.
yeah, is it seriously, and this is the last question, and then we'll do our lightning round get down, but is it seriously noticeable when you switch? Like if I were to switch to start using MIDI and I bought like a gig rig, like a simple, like a quarter
Mhm.
master or something very simple
Yeah.
or whatever, is it like audibly very noticeable when you do that? Just in terms like you're saying with signal flow, or is it like the normal person won't hear it kind of thing?
You'll hear it for sure. It depends on what pedals you're using. Like if you're used to plugging through like 7 pedals together
Mm-hmm.
and they're all true bypass, then you'll hear it for sure
Okay.
because all of a sudden you're going to be going through way less cable. Now, if you're plugged through 7 pedals and one of them has a monster buffer that overwhelms everything, you're not going to hear as much of a difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you'll hear just the difference between that buffer and no buffer, basically. You know what I mean? Which is also another difference. I'm not a big fan of many buffers. Um, there's really only ever been one that I dig. But even if it comes down to the choice of do I want a buffer or not, I almost always shut them off in most situations.
Yeah.
That's why I have the looper in general, is so that, yeah, because honestly, most of the time I'm playing just the chula or just the chula in the flashback. You know, so when nothing's on, I don't need a buffer. I'm going straight into the amp. And when the chula's on, well, I'm buffered. It's on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And usually any other pedal that comes in that's being combined with the chula or something. So I don't find myself needing another buffer. You know, I think buffers are cool if you're going to run everything in series without a looper. You know, but yeah, but if you already have like all high quality true bypass pedals and no buffers, then yeah, you'll hear a big difference between, you know, running through 9 pedals and all that cable true bypass. Your signal's going like this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you will hear a big difference, absolutely. Yeah.
I just got the 29 pedals Una like about a month ago. Have you heard about that thing?
No, I don't know.
Oh, dude, you need to go check it out. It's, you know what? Let me grab it, show you it, because it's really cool. All right, so this thing is just, all it is a really high quality, like studio grade buffer, basically. It has, so you can run all your fuzzes independently. So if you're worried about, you know, fuzzes being after or
Mhm.
whatever, you can do that in here. So it's kind of like almost like an effects loop kind of situation.
Mhm.
But it has, what's cool about it, it's got these just 3 dip switches, and it's just boosting low frequency harmonics and brilliance. That's all it is. And the first time I plugged this thing in to my board and I just, sat down and played, I was shocked at how much tone was sucked out of my playing. Like, I feel like this thing just elevated everything. And what's cool about it is, you can flip on, all those independently. So if you're losing low end and you want to, boost that frequency, whatever it may be, I mean, it's like pro audio gear basically for your pedal board.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's, man, like, talk about if you're like, buffers, like, you might want to check it out just to check it out. Cause it's the real deal. It's the truth, man.
Well, yeah, if I was going through multiple without a switcher, then that'd be something I'd be really interested in. Yeah, because I think you have to have a good buffer, if you're going to just run in series through all those pedals. Yeah. And a lot of the buffers that are built into a lot of these pedals, not so great. You know what I mean? Not so pleasing.
Right. Like, how good is the Boss Chromatic Tuner's buffer?
Right, exactly.
What's that going to really do for me? All right, you ready to do this lightning round get down?
Sure.
All right, so it's 10 questions. I'm going to put on a metronome just for some suspense.
Okay.
The first question is always the same. Now, what you can do here, Josh, is if you want to explain your answers, feel free. I love hearing explanations. If you just want to burn through these questions, that's fine as well.
Fair enough.
All right, here we go. Lennon or McCartney?
McCartney.
All right. Soup or salad?
Soup. I hate salad.
Reverb or eBay?
Oh. The selection is better on Reverb, but I've gotten better deals on eBay.
Fair enough. All right. Would you rather see into the future or be able to travel to the future?
Shit. I think see into the future so I could get rich.
Okay.
I want to be like Biff from Back to the Future.
Sports Almanac, bro.
That's right.
All right. Klon or clone?
I'm going to say neither. I'm not a Klon guy.
Not a Klon guy?
No.
Because of that buffer, man.
No, it's just been one of those pedals. We all have them where it's like, oh, everybody loves this. I can't jive with it. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I get you. All right. Die Hard. Christmas movie or not a Christmas movie?
It is a Christmas movie. Absolutely. I think we've made it a Christmas movie, but it is a Christmas movie. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Lettuce or Soul Live?
Oh, lettuce. Not that I don't like Soul Live, but give me the funkier shit.
Yeah.
And Nigel Hall. Give me Nigel Hall too.
Singing. All day. Dude, are you into John Cleary? I'm sure you are.
Oh, yeah. I love John Cleary. Yeah.
That record, Dynamite, with like Nigel Hall sings. Oh,
yep.
that album. All right. Rolling Stone magazine or Spin magazine?
Rolling Stone.
All right. DC or Marvel?
Marvel. I'm a big comic book nerd, and not that I don't like DC, but Marvel's been the not the soundtrack, but whatever. It's been my whole life. Like, I've read Spider-Man since I was a baby, and X-Men and Spider-Man have been my thing since I was a little kid.
Josh, if we were in the same vicinity, we might be best buds because I'm a huge Marvel nerd too, and video game nerd, and guitar nerd. Yeah. All right, last question. Sometimes this is the hardest, sometimes it's the easiest. Motown or Stax?
Yeah, that's really difficult. That's like, which brother do you like better? You know what I mean?
I know.
I love them both so much, but just on a personal level, Stax has meant more to my guitar playing, I'll say. Steve Cropper was just so instrumental. Not that the Motown guys were not, and not that I don't love the music equally, but I guess I'd have to go Stax in my personal little world.
All right, cool. Well, you made it through. You survived. Season 1, episode 27, Josh Smith survived the lightning round. All right, man. Just as a quick aside, did you see that Muscle Shoals documentary?
Of course, yeah.
How amazing was that?
It's a great documentary. Also, how depressing is Rick Hall's story? My goodness, the amount of terrible shit that happened to Rick Hall. Ugh, unreal.
I know. That was tough to watch. So thank you again for making the time, Josh. I super appreciate you, man, for hanging out and doing this.
You're welcome, man.
I'm so thrilled that you were the last guest on this season, and I was really looking forward to this and talking to you, man. You're a big inspiration in my life as a guitarist. So just so you know,
That's very
yeah,
nice
just like you were saying, for other people you listen to, it's the same way for me, man. Just listening to what you do and kind of copping those licks and trying to get it under my hands, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. So thanks, guys, so much for hanging out. We'll see you next time. The next episode is going to be actually Gabe Dixon in beginning of January. Are you hip to that, dude, Josh?
Gabe Dixon? I don't think so.
He actually went to Suntan U. He went to Miami, and he's a Nashville cat, but he's the organ player now in Tedeschi Trucks Band. He's a keyboard player.
Oh, I met him then last time that he had just joined. Last time they were here in LA, and I went because I've known Derek since we were kids. So I did meet him, but yeah, I didn't know him until then. Yeah. Okay.
He's got some great music himself too. So, all right, y'all. We'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.